Nintendo made a very big statement today. They said that starting on March 25th, which is in about 2 months from now, they are no longer going to accept payments from PayPal accounts or credit cards that have been issued or created overseas, so outside of Japan. And this will apply to both the Nintendo eShop as well as the My Nintendo store. And that is really all we got, other than their exactly 6-word explanation for apparently why this is. And that is, quote, in order to prevent fraudulent use. So that's, quite vague. And that is pretty much the entire post. So, yeah, now we are obviously left to sort of scratch our heads and pretty much speculate on really why this is. Yeah, why is it that Nintendo, starting on March 25th, is essentially going to stop accepting foreign currency for their online payments? Well, I looked on Reddit and I saw that actually a lot of people are saying that quite a bit of Japanese retailers online have been doing this same thing in the last year or two. Basically, they are also doing it where they're not accepting anything other than Japanese yen as payment. And a lot of people were talking about the exchange rate of the Japanese yen. Apparently, it has not been good recently. And so this could be hypothetically also to prevent people from buying Nintendo products at a sort of discount if they are just going to buy it in Japanese yen while purchasing from a PayPal account that's, in the US or the UK or something. I did also see one person point out that March 25th is actually about a week before the actual Nintendo Switch 2 conference that they are going to have on April 2nd, which will probably reveal all of the details and price of the Switch 2, so maybe that could be in some way connected to this. But essentially, if we are to believe that what they are saying is true, that it is just to prevent fraud, then I kind of thought maybe I should look into why a lot of these other Japanese online retailers are doing this same thing. And while obviously I found that there is not just one reason why this has been happening, I did find that some of it is, yes, due to fraud. Yeah, international transactions can carry a sort of risk for fraud and chargebacks, and obviously that's not just for Japan, that really probably is for any country. But also one thing that I did see that was brought up is scalping. Yeah, when people buy in bulk and then they resell it at a higher price, this is something that has really been quite the phenomenon recently. I know we deal with it a lot in the US, and I've even seen reports that they are doing the same thing in Japan. So with that, plus the exchange rate of the yen, maybe that's really making scalping a sort of problem. People overseas are buying in bulk, taking advantage of that, and then reselling it, maybe in their area. Now, one other thing too is that when I saw this story, it actually made me think back a couple months to late November when I made a video about how Nintendo had just announced that in 2026 they are going to shut down the eShop in China. And I want to point out a comment that somebody actually left on my video that they say they live in China, and they talked about the eShop specifically in China, and it actually kind of gave me some insight that definitely applies to this story today, because essentially what this person said is that in China, it's very common to not go with the actual China eShop because this is a closed network service, so essentially they're only going to offer games that are approved of by, I would assume, the government. And so a lot of people will buy Japanese or Hong Kong models of the Nintendo Switch, and likewise would, I would assume anyway, use the eShop from Japan or maybe Hong Kong. But I'm specifically thinking Japan because what I'm getting at here is that there are probably a lot of people in China and maybe other countries like this who actually do use the Japanese eShop when they obviously don't live in Japan, and so they are probably not paying with Japanese yen. So that could very much be a problem for them going forward if they are using the eShop in Japan, unless they are going to find some sort of a way to exchange their local currency with Japanese yen. Unless that happens, they actually would not be able to make any purchases on the eShop. That would be a pretty big deal. So that's kind of a little tangent from, I guess, the overall story here. But, with that, if Japan sees that they are losing a lot of customers from this, a lot of overseas customers that just happen to use the Japanese eShop, then maybe possibly they would reverse their stance on this. I don't know. I don't know if this is just going to be a temporary thing, if they are planning on this just happening for a few years, or if this is going to be permanent. Like I said, what we got from Nintendo today from their post was really not much. We are left to kind of speculate what all of this really means, but for right now, we can expect that on March 25th, you will only be able to make purchases purchases on the Japanese eShop locally.